I remember the night Rekiya ran into our village, barefoot and wide-eyed, clutching a sack of sugar so tightly her knuckles turned white. She was covered in cuts and bruises, and her trembling lips whispered, "They are coming." It all started 3 weeks before. Rekiya was the youngest daughter of Mama Habiba, a woman known for selling the best sweets in the region. Mama Habiba's sugar candies were famous in our little corner of Nigeria, and people came from far and wide to buy them. Rekiya, being her only helper, was always in the kitchen, stirring, molding, and wrapping the sweets. One day, Mama Habiba fell ill. It wasn't just a cold or a fever, it was something worse. She couldn't stand up without feeling dizzy, and soon she was confined to her bed. With her mother unable to walk, Rekiya decided she would take over the business. She was only 13, but she knew how important those sweets were to their survival. Rekiya's first attempt at making the sugar candies didn't go well. The sugar burned, and the syrup hardened into a rock-like lump. The smell of burnt sugar filled the air, and the neighbors teased her mercilessly. But Rekiya didn't give up. She spent nights perfecting the recipe, and soon her candies were as good as her mother's, maybe even better. It was during this time that strange things began happening. At first, it was little stuff. A bag of sugar went missing from their storage room. Rekiya thought it was mice or maybe some naughty boys in the village. Then, one night, she heard a soft tapping on the kitchen window. When she looked, there was no one there. She laughed it off, thinking she was just tired. But the next morning, there were footprints in the dirt outside the window. They weren't human footprints. They were small and sharp, like claws. One evening, as Rekiya was packing up the day's candies, a man came to the store. He was tall, with a face so thin it looked like his skin barely clung to his bones. His eyes were bright, too bright, like they could see right through you. He smiled at Rekiya and said, "The sweets smell delicious. I take a sack of sugar." Rekiya hesitated. Sugar was expensive, and they couldn't spare much. But the man insisted, placing a few shiny coins on the counter. The coins looked strange, old, and dull, like they'd been buried for years. Rekiya's stomach churned, but she didn't want to turn him away. She handed him the sack, and the man left without another word. That night, Mama Habiba's condition got worse. She started mumbling strange things in her sleep. Rekiya couldn't make out most of it, but one word kept coming up, Zain. Rekiya didn't know anyone by that name, but it made her uneasy. The next morning, Rekiya went to check their remaining sugar. To her horror, almost all of it was gone. There was just one sack left, hidden behind some old pots. As she lifted it, she found a note tucked underneath. It said, "Return what you owe, or we will take it ourselves." Rekiya didn't tell anyone about the note. She thought it was a prank. But over the next few days, more strange things happened. She saw shadows moving where there shouldn't be any. The smell of burnt sugar lingered even when she hadn't been cooking. And then, one night, she woke up to the sound of footsteps outside her window. She peeked out and saw the tall man again, standing in the moonlight, holding another sack of sugar. He wasn't alone this time. There were others with him, their eyes glowing like his. Rekiya knew she had to act. She grabbed the last sack of sugar and ran. She didn't know where she was going, she just knew she had to get away. That's how she ended up in our village, begging for help. The elders listened to her story, their faces grim. They whispered among themselves, mentioning old tales about spirits that could take human form. They said these beings would make deals with humans, but their price was always too high. That night, the entire village stayed awake, keeping watch. Rekiya stayed in my family's hut, clutching the sack of sugar like it was her lifeline. Around midnight, we heard it. The sound of footsteps, faint at first, then louder. And then came the knocking, soft but insistent, on the door. "Rekiya," a voice called. It was the tall man. "We just want what's ours." Nobody moved. My father tightened his grip on the machete he'd been holding. The knocking grew louder, more frantic. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. When we opened the door at sunrise, there was nothing there except for a pile of sugar, melted into a sticky mess on the ground. Rekiya stayed with us for a few more days, but she was never the same. She stopped making candies and refused to go near the kitchen. Eventually, Mama Habiba recovered, but their family left the village soon after. Some say they went to the city, where spirits couldn't follow. Others believe the spirits got what they wanted, and Rekiya paid the price. I still think about her sometimes, especially when I see sugar spilling on the ground. It makes me wonder, what did she really owe? And was it ever worth it?
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click the like, share and subscribe button. See you in the next Untold African Story.